Before we get into today's video, I just want to take a second to say thank you. Genuinely. If you are watching this, whether you have been here since the beginning or you just found this channel today, you are the reason we keep making these videos. Every single view, every comment, every person who shares one of these with someone they care about, it means more than you know. We are on our way to 500 subscribers, and if this kind of content speaks to you, the single biggest thing you can do to help us get there is to hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment below, even just a word or two. It genuinely helps YouTube show this to more people who need to hear it, and it helps us know that we're making something worth your time. Okay, let's get into it. There is a type of person Carl Jung spent years warning the world about. Not the obvious villain. Not the person who hurts you openly, whose intentions are clear from the beginning. Jung was warning about something far more dangerous. The person who feels immediately, almost supernaturally, safe. The person everyone in the room trusts within minutes of meeting them. The person you find yourself telling things to that you have never told anyone else, and then wondering afterward how that happened. Jung called this the persona, a mask so perfectly crafted that even the person wearing it has forgotten they put it on. And the warning he left us was this: the more seamlessly someone fits what you need them to be, the more carefully you should look at what they might be hiding underneath. Let's start with what the persona actually is, because Jung wasn't describing something rare or exotic. He believed every human being develops a persona, a social face designed to help us navigate the world. We all show different versions of ourselves in different contexts. That's not manipulation, that's simply how humans function. But Jung identified a specific and troubling subset of persona, the person who has developed theirs to an extraordinary degree. Someone who has learned, usually through early life experience, that the fastest path to power, safety, or belonging is through being exactly what other people need them to be. Not approximately, exactly. With a precision that feels to anyone on the receiving end like genuine connection. Here is where it becomes psychologically interesting. Jung believed that when we encounter someone who mirrors us this precisely, who shares our values, who seems to understand our pain, who reflects our own self-concept back at us in the most flattering possible light, our unconscious mind does something powerful. It drops its guard. Because the unconscious interprets that level of recognition as familiarity, as safety, as, this person is like me, and I am safe with people like me. This is not a flaw in the psyche. It is actually a deeply logical shortcut. The problem is that it can be deliberately exploited. What makes this kind of person so difficult to identify is that their warmth is not always fake. This is the nuance that most people miss. Jung wasn't describing someone who feels nothing and performs everything. He was describing someone whose warmth is real in the moment, but ultimately in service of something else. Connection for them is not the destination, it is the currency. Think about how this plays out in everyday life. You meet someone and within an hour you feel like you've known them for years. They lean in when you talk. They remember small details you mentioned in passing. They are consistently on your side in group dynamics, subtly positioning themselves as your ally without you asking. They offer help before you've even thought to ask for it. They make you feel, perhaps for the first time in a long time, genuinely seen. Jung would ask you to sit with that feeling of being seen and ask one question. Seen by whom, exactly? Because there is a profound difference between someone who truly sees you and someone who has studied what you most want to be seen as and is reflecting that image back at you. The first experience leads to genuine intimacy. The second leads to something that feels indistinguishable from intimacy, until the moment it doesn't serve them anymore. Carl Jung's concept of the shadow is essential here. He believed that what we cannot see in ourselves we will inevitably project onto others. The highly skilled persona wearer understands this instinctively. They don't need a psychology textbook to know it. They feel it. They sense what each person in the room most needs to believe about themselves, and they become the mirror that confirms it. You want to believe you are perceptive? They tell you how quickly you understood something no one else noticed. You want to believe you are kind? They share a vulnerable story that gives you the opportunity to show your compassion. You want to believe you are chosen, special, different from everyone else. They make sure you know, early and often, that you are unlike anyone they have ever met. This is what Jung was warning about. Not cruelty, not obvious manipulation. the much quieter danger of someone who has turned the art of reflecting your own shadow back at you into a form of control. Because once you believe someone truly understands you at that level, you grant them a degree of access, emotional, practical, psychological, that you would never grant a stranger. Except they are still a stranger. You just don't know it yet. Now here is the part of Jung's analysis that most people find uncomfortable. Why do we fall for this so completely? Jung's answer was not that we are naive or weak. His answer was that we are incomplete. Every human being carries within them a version of themselves they have not yet fully become. Unlived potential, suppressed qualities, traits they were told were too much, or not enough, or simply not safe to express. Jung called this material the shadow, and he believed it creates a constant, mostly unconscious hunger to be recognized for what we actually are, beneath the surface of who we present ourselves to be. The person Jung was warning about has learned to feed that hunger with devastating precision. They do not connect with who you are. They connect with who you most deeply want to be seen as. And for a psyche that has been waiting, sometimes for decades, to be truly recognized, that experience is almost impossible to resist. This is why the most emotionally intelligent people are often the most vulnerable to this dynamic. Not because they are naive, but because they have rich inner lives that rarely get the kind of recognition this person seems to offer so effortlessly. So what does Jung suggest we actually do with this? The first thing is to slow down the speed of trust. Not to become cold, not to become suspicious of everyone who is warm and perceptive, but to recognize that genuine depth of connection takes time to build, and that anything which feels like it arrived fully formed, instantly, effortlessly, perfectly, deserves a second look. Real intimacy has friction. It has moments of misunderstanding and repair. It has the texture of two separate people learning each other. If someone feels like they already know you before they've had the chance to, Jung would encourage you to ask what they're actually working from. The second thing is to notice what you are being asked to give. The person Jung describes always, eventually, requires something. Access, loyalty, influence, the ability to speak on your behalf, the disclosure of information you would not otherwise share. Pay attention to the current of exchange running beneath the warmth. Not every generous person has an agenda, but generosity that arrives in a rush before trust has been earned often has a price attached that you won't see until later. The third, and perhaps most important thing Jung would tell us is to do our own shadow work. Because the reason this dynamic works so reliably is that it exploits the gap between who we are and who we most want to be recognized as. The smaller that gap, the more we have done the work of actually knowing ourselves, of integrating our own darkness and brightness and contradictions, the harder it becomes for someone to manufacture the feeling of being seen. When you already see yourself clearly, a mirror loses most of its power over you. The person Jung was warning about is not rare. They are in offices and families and friend groups and relationships everywhere. They are sometimes aware of what they do, and sometimes they are not, which makes this dynamic even more complex, because their self-belief can be genuine even when their behavior is harmful. What Jung wanted us to understand is not that the world is full of predators to be feared. What he wanted us to understand is that the deepest vulnerability in any human psyche is the hunger to be truly known. And that hunger, left unexamined, is the door through which the most sophisticated forms of manipulation always enter. The antidote is not suspicion. It is self-knowledge. The more clearly you see yourself, your wounds, your patterns, your unmet needs, the specific ways you most want to be recognized, the less power anyone else holds over that door. Know your own shadow, and you will always know when someone is simply holding up a mirror. If this opens something for you, share it with someone you think might need to hear it. And if you want to go deeper on Jung's psychology of the self, the shadow, and how our unconscious shapes every relationship we form, subscribe.